Look, I need you to pay close attention right now because what I'm about to share with you could legitimately reshape the entire landscape of Major League Baseball heading into next season. Jeff Passan just published something that has the entire baseball world buzzing. And if you're a Dodgers fan, you need to understand exactly what this means for your team's championship aspirations. We're talking about a potential trade scenario that would be seismic, the kind of move that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it changes everything. Before we get too deep into this, do me a huge favor and smash that like button. Hit subscribe if you haven't already because we're building something special here and I need your support to keep this momentum rolling. Drop your thoughts in the comments as we go through this because I genuinely want to know what you're thinking. All right, let's dive in. So ESPN just published Jeff Passan's list of the top 25 players who could be traded this offseason. Now, I want to be clear about something right from the start. This isn't a ranking of who's most likely to be traded versus least likely. This is a ranking of the 25 best players who are potentially available, ranked from best to worst in terms of talent and impact. And when it comes to baseball insiders, Jeff Passan is the absolute gold standard. I've reached the point where I don't really care what John Morosi says, what Bob Nightingale reports, or even what John Heyman tweets, unless Jeff Passan confirms it or reports it himself. That's not a knock on those other guys, but Passan has sources at the highest levels, and when he puts his name on something, you can take it to the bank. So when he publishes a list like this, especially with the winter meetings coming up, it's worth taking seriously. And guess who's sitting at number one on that list? Tarik Skubal. That's right, the Detroit Tigers ace, the guy who just won back-to-back American League Cy Young Awards, the first pitcher to do that in the AL since the late 90s. We're talking about an elite, dominant, generational pitching talent who's entering his prime years at just 30 years old. The fact that he's even on this list, let alone at the top of it, tells you everything you need to know about where things stand between him and the Tigers organization. This isn't some speculative rumor or hot take from a random blogger. This is Jeff Passan saying that Tarik Skubal is the best player who could realistically be moved this offseason. Let that sink in for a second. Now, the obvious question is, why would Detroit even consider trading him? And that's where things get really interesting. Matthew Corey reported a while back that during extension talks between the Tigers and Skubal, Detroit's offer came in at less than $80 million over 4 years. Let me say that again. Less than $80 million over 4 years for a back-to-back Cy Young winner who's 30 years old and absolutely dominant. That's not just a lowball offer. That's borderline insulting. When you look at what starting pitchers are getting paid on the open market right now, when you consider what Skubal has accomplished over the last 2 seasons, that offer is nowhere close to market value. According to the reporting, that left the two sides somewhere in the neighborhood of $320 million apart in their valuations. That's not a negotiation gap you can bridge with a few phone calls. That's a fundamental disconnect about what this player is worth. So naturally, when that news broke, it sparked immediate speculation about whether the Tigers would consider trading him. But here's where it gets complicated. Detroit publicly maintains that they have no intention of moving Skubal. They're saying all the right things about how he's their cornerstone, how they plan to contend next year, how important he is to their future. And to be fair, those things are all true. Tarik Skubal is an incredible pitcher. Last season, he posted a 2.21 ERA, a whip under .9, struck out 241 batters in 195 innings, allowed only 18 home runs, and gave up just 6.5 hits per 9 innings. Those aren't just good numbers. Those are elite, historically great numbers. You can argue all you want about how competitive the American League Cy Young race was, but Skubal was clearly the best pitcher in that league. He was better than Garrett Crochet, better than everyone else who got votes. It wasn't close when you actually break down the metrics. The Tigers came within a few outs of reaching the American League Championship Series last year. They're a young team on the rise, and Skubal is the centerpiece of that entire operation. So from their perspective, why would you trade the best player on your roster when you're trying to build a contender? That's the logic they're operating under publicly. But here's what Jeff Passan is reporting, and this is critical. Despite several executives around the league believing Skubal will be moved, The Tigers have shown no signs of deviating from their stance that he's staying in Detroit. He's a free agent after the 2026 season. Contract extension talks have gone nowhere. And while Detroit says he's not available, the reality is that his trade value will never be higher than it is right now. Think about this from a purely business standpoint. Skubal just turned 30. His value is at an absolute peak. If the Tigers trade him now, they can get a haul of young, controllable talent that sets them up for sustained success over the next 5 to 7 years. If they hold on to him, they're betting that they can compete next year, that he stays healthy, that he maintains this elite level of performance, and that they can either sign him to an extension they clearly can't afford or aren't willing to pay, or they lose him in free agency after next season for nothing more than draft pick compensation. That's an enormous gamble. And if things don't go according to plan next year, if they're not contending by the trade deadline, his value drops significantly because teams are only getting him for a playoff push rather than a full season plus playoffs. So while Detroit is saying he's not available, Jess Passan is reporting that executives around baseball believe there's a real chance he gets moved. And that brings us to the Dodgers. Passan outlined the top landing spots for Skubal if he does become available, and the Dodgers are right near the top of that list. The Mets are the team to watch most closely, which makes sense given Steve Cohen's willingness to spend and their desire to build a championship roster immediately. But right behind them are the Dodgers, followed by the Orioles, Yankees, Red Sox, and Giants, all contending teams with deep farm systems and the financial resources to make a deal happen. Now, here's where I want to address something head on. Do the Dodgers actually need Tarik Skubal? On paper, their rotation is already loaded. Yoshinobu Yamamoto just won World Series MVP and looks like a future perennial Cy Young candidate. Blake Snell was fantastic when healthy and gives them another ace-level arm. Shohei Ohtani is the best player on planet Earth and will be back on the mound. There's still uncertainty around Tyler Glasnow and whether he gets traded, but as of right now, he's on the roster. You've got young guys like Gavin Stone and River Ryan who are expected to be ready for spring training. And, of course, there's the Roki Sasaki situation that could add another elite international arm. This is a deep, talented rotation, even without adding anyone else. But here's my answer to that question. Yes, the Dodgers absolutely should pursue Tarik Skubal if he becomes available. Why? Because depth matters, because injuries happen, because you can never have too much pitching, especially elite pitching. The Dodgers dealt with a ton of rotation injuries last season. They managed to overcome it and win a championship, but they also caught some breaks along the way. You can't count on that kind of fortune every single year. If you're serious about a three-peat, if you want to maximize this window while Shohei is in his prime and Yamamoto is ascending, you add elite talent wherever you can find it. Skubal isn't just an upgrade, he's insurance. He's the kind of pitcher who can anchor a postseason rotation and give you a legitimate ace-level start in a Game 7. And let me show you something that really drives home how special this guy is. If you go look at Skubal's Baseball Savant page, it's legitimately one of the most impressive profiles you'll ever see for a starting pitcher. Almost every single metric is in the red or dark red, meaning he's in the elite 95th percentile or higher across the board. The only categories where he's around the 50th percentile are things like extension, which is basically a useless metric anyway, and ground ball percentage and barrel percentage. And honestly, those metrics don't even matter that much in his case because hitters don't make solid contact against him frequently enough for it to be a real concern. When you're throwing as hard as he does with the kind of movement and command he has, and when batters are constantly swinging and missing or making weak contact, who cares if the occasional barrel goes a long way? It's not happening often enough to hurt you. This is an elite pitcher by every meaningful measure. So here's what I want to know from you, and I'm genuinely curious about this. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being least likely and 10 being most likely, what do you think the odds are that Tarik Skubal actually gets traded this offseason? For me personally, I'd put it around a 4 right now, maybe creeping up toward a 5. I think Detroit genuinely wants to keep him and compete next year. But I also think that if extension talks stay completely stalled, if they keep getting offers from teams that blow them away And if they start doing the math on potentially losing him for nothing in free agency, that number could climb in a hurry. There's just too much value on the table to ignore. If I'm running the Tigers and I know I'm $200 or $300 million apart from Scooble on an extension, I'm at least listening to what teams are offering. I'm exploring what kind of package I could get back. Because if you can land 3 or 4 elite prospects who are controllable for the next 6 years, that might be better for your long-term competitive window than one more year of Scooble followed by watching him sign a massive deal with someone else. From the Dodgers' perspective, they have the assets to make this happen. Their farm system is still strong despite all the promotions and trades over the last few years. They have the financial flexibility to absorb Scooble's contract for next season and potentially extend him if they want to go that route. And they have the organizational infrastructure to support another elite arm and help him thrive in a high-pressure environment. If they can acquire him without completely gutting the farm system, without giving up untouchable pieces, it's absolutely worth exploring. You don't pass on opportunities to add generational talent just because your roster is already good. You make it better and figure out the depth chart later. But there's one final point that Jess Passan makes in his report, and I think it's worth discussing. He asks how long Scooble, who just turned 30, can keep this level of performance up. It's a fair question. Pitchers are volatile. We've seen guys fall off seemingly overnight. Injuries happen, stuff diminishes, the league makes adjustments. I personally don't think that's going to happen to Scooble anytime soon. His track record suggests he's durable, his arsenal is elite, and he's right in the middle of what should be his prime years. But it is something to consider when you're talking about trading significant assets or committing major money to a long-term extension. For the Dodgers, the calculus might be simpler. Trade for him, ride him for a championship push in 2026, and then reassess when he hits free agency, especially with the new CBA negotiations looming in 2027 that could fundamentally change the financial landscape of the sport. Look, I don't know if this trade is actually going to happen. Detroit could very well hold firm and run it back with Scooble for another year. But the fact that Jess Passan is reporting this, the fact that executives around the league believe he's gettable, and the fact that the Dodgers are being mentioned as a serious contender, that's significant. This would be a franchise-altering move. It would give them another legitimate ace to pair with Yamamoto and Ohtani. It would provide crucial depth and insurance against injuries. And it would send a clear message to the rest of baseball that the Dodgers aren't satisfied with one championship. They're building a dynasty. We'll keep you updated as this story develops because this is one you absolutely need to follow. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you want to see Scooble in Dodger blue? What would you be willing to give up to make it happen? Let me know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button and let's keep growing this community together. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.